So when did you find out about Dr. Jones's treatment?
From Facebook. So I was scrolling through and there was a family that said they were heading over to Utah, and they said they were inspired by Oliver's Choice. And they, so then I Googled that and I saw the Oliver's Choice Facebook page, and I contacted Simone Albert, and we just started messaging back and forth. I was like, is this true? Is this a scam? Is this
happening?
And she reassured me that it was all true and happened, and it's snowballed from there. So
What year was that? Do you remember?
2018.
So when you told your husband about it?
So I told my husband about it, and he thought I was being ridiculous and rolled his eyes at me. Then I said, no, this is it, it's true, this is it. And then he said, well, talk to the allergists in Australia, talk to the specialists we have and see their opinion and see what they thought. And so I contacted them, and then they said, he's a cowboy, it's at risk, you could kill your child, you're putting your child's life at risk, this is very dangerous. So I hung up, and I was obviously extremely nervous that, would move to another country and do a wild experiment that's not proven, and all the things that they had said. I got very, very nervous, and but I couldn't let it go. I was just, I knew in my heart that it was right. And then Dr. Jones was coming to Brisbane to give a conference, and so I just booked us two plane tickets and flew up there, and
Free.
sorry?
Free.
No, it's just you and me when we first went to Brisbane, the conference, before we'd left. And then we listened to Dr. Jones talk, and then at the end, everyone was kind of lining up to talk to him. So I stood in the line waiting, and I said, I previously emailed you, because Isaac had more complications because he had been diagnosed with easier esophagitis. So Dr. Jones was more cautious because of that, and he said to me, I can't promise this will work, and it's not going to be easy, but if you're up for the challenge, so am I. And I said, what do we do next? And he said, get a visa. So, yeah, we booked an appointment with the US Embassy to get a medical visa, and we had our appointment. Then the three of us went, so my daughter, because she came to Utah with us.
How old was she?
9, I think. And, yeah, I think she was 9. And we went to the embassy, we got our visas approved, and booked the next ticket we could.
Wow.
So,
How was the separation from your husband?
it was really hard because he stayed behind, but so did my eldest son, who was in year 6, which is the same age Isaac is now. Yeah, it was really hard to separate the family. That was probably, the hardest part. And yeah, I'd never been to the USA before, so first time going overseas to the USA with 2 children.
Hawaii.
Oh, sorry, we had been to Hawaii. Sorry, hadn't been to the mainland USA. Certainly never been to Utah.
What was your first impression of Utah?
It was so hot.
Oh, so you went in summer, American summer.
Yes, we June. Well, first of all, our flight was cancelled, and it was so we were supposed to fly United Airlines, and that flight was cancelled. So we swapped to a Qantas plane that flew into Dallas. So we flew Sydney to Dallas, then Dallas to Salt Lake City, and not all our luggage joined us. But when we got out and the heat just hit us in the face, it was it was a very, very hot day. And we weren't expecting the heat. But it was just the mountains. I guess that was the big thing. We just had the driver drove us to our apartment building in Leighton, and I think the whole time we're just looking at the Rocky Mountains and mountain ranges. It was just spectacular. Yeah.
And then when you settled, did you have some straight away? Did you have Australian support straight away? Did you connect already with all the Australians?
We had already been messaging beforehand, and they joined me onto a group messenger chat that we'd been on, so they knew we were coming. And when we arrived at the apartment building, our neighbours had run down and gave us big hugs and showed us around. And one of my friends who was there, Tina, she wasn't there, she was in New York at the time, but she had filled my fridge with food so that when we arrived we had allergy, and her child was dairy-free, egg-free, nut-free as well. So she it was just so beautiful. She just picked all these, all the allergy safe. There was a bread and dairy-free margarine and things like that. And then our neighbours across, the Ellises, they drove us to Target to pick up some more food, and they cooked us dinner that night, and it was just beautiful. Yeah.
That sounds like a good beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So how long did you stay in Newcastle for?
It was around 9 months. So we arrived in June and we came home the Easter the next year.
So experienced pretty much all seasons.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did, and it was April. I think it was April when we left, and it snowed the day we left. So it was still snowing.
And Christmas time as well.
Yeah.
Christmas.
So we got there and it was extremely, extremely hot, and then it was kind of, normal temperature for like a week, and then it snowed.
Wow. It snowed.
So it snowed from October till April, I think.
Did you do any winter sports while you were there?
We did. Isaac and I, we could not ski because we didn't have insurance to cover us because we were on a medical visa. But the rest of my family, they skied every day or snowboarded. But we did the toboggans. That was lots of fun. Went tobogganing, and every afternoon after school, the kids in the playground would just build snowmen or have snow fights, or we had a little hill that they all sled down, and yeah,
It's beautiful. And what about education? How? Because for some families that's a big factor. Did you have to do remote education? How did you cope with that?
yes. So we did in New South Wales distance education. We were because we're based in Newcastle. Our local school was Port Macquarie. They did the region, and we were connected with a teacher who we would Skype with 1 hour a week, and then the rest of they would email the lessons that you complete, and then I would scan it and send it back, and we'd have that marked. And so we had a lot of, there was a lot to do, but it was completely manageable. So
Well done.
yeah.
You managed it well.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the least enjoyable part of everything, getting the schoolwork done. he didn't come back behind in any of his subjects, or that was all good. So.
And how did you feel going through the treatment? At what point did you feel more lifted up? Because initially you said you were anxious and uncertain what's going to happen.
By the time I decided to go to Utah, I just had all my trust and faith in Dr. Jones, and so it was a decision. I just said, if I'm not going over there to doubt him or to question him. I'm going to use my faith and trust in him and the process, and that's. I wasn't nervous after we had decided that, and it felt very measured and professional, and I think my advice that I gave to anyone else after they came after us is it's as much a mental challenge as a physical one, and I think I believe why he was so successful was he completely trusted Dr. Jones in the process and embraced the challenges, whereas I think some other people that were fearful during the whole process, they didn't get as good results because, that there was the anxiety there and the nervousness, and, you would see it on their face, and then the heart rate would race and the hives would come, and, it was... Yeah, I think it's a mental challenge, and I said to Dr. Jones before, when we had our first challenge for the other tree nuts, we'd been avoiding them for 6 years. I didn't have them in my house, and then I was actually too scared to buy them. Another one of the mums, Catherine, went to Whole Foods and bought she bought the tree nuts for me because I didn't even want to go down that aisle with Isaac because we just had avoided all that before. So she said, I'm going to Whole Foods, I'll pick them up for you. And I double bagged them, and I was so scared of these nuts, and then all these challenges we did, and he'd pass all of them, all the nuts that we challenged. We didn't challenge.
So pretty much almost everything you were told to avoid in Australia,
yeah, he passed. He passed.
And when you question allergists in Australia about the challenges, they refuse to do them. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Did they give you reasons, or?
No, it was too dangerous.
And with that advice, his weight was the 25th percentile.
Yeah, that's correct.
His weight was.
Yeah, height and weight. He lost so much weight, and we'd also originally to that note we'd been told that he wasn't allergic to egg, and I was encouraged to give him egg, and every time we did, he said his mouth felt furry, and they said, oh, he's getting triggered off verbal cues from you because you must be letting, and then
Yeah, go. We can have that part.
he actually, one of the times when they said you need to increase his diet and give him egg, and we had like a carbonara, and we had to give him an EpiPen because he had egg, and then when we went back and tested, they said, oh, he's at risk for anaphylaxis for egg.
So you learned the hard way pretty much everything. So
Yeah.
how liberating would it have been going to Utah?
Yeah.
That week of challenges, or was it a week of challenges? Or?
Yeah.
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 Tell us about your dream. I've heard about your dream. Could you tell us the story?
Yeah, so we had, Isaac was, big, fit, healthy, strong, baby, and then once we started solids is when he started to, vomit a lot and lose weight, and then from 6 months to 12 months, he didn't gain any weight at all. So they, said he had failure to thrive, and then that's where we were referred to the gastroenterologist and diagnosed with eosinophilic esophagitis after having scopes. And that's when we started avoiding milk, because they said milk's often a trigger. So we didn't have any dairy, and then he did start to gain weight because he, you know, wasn't as sick. But we had a lot of, like, a lot of hospitalisations over a lot of other things as well. He's just always sick, and then by the time he was 6, he'd had 6 anaphylactic reactions, and it was just, you know, the anxiety and the worry was just increasing, and I was, you know, how am I going to keep my baby safe? How am I going to keep him safe? And he had his kindergarten orientation day, and he was in the kindergarten room, and he's playing with the toys with another boy. They were stacking blocks, and all of a sudden his eyes were watering, and he used to, like, really doing an itch, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's going, his body went completely red, and he went into anaphylactic shock, and we had to give him an EpiPen, and there wasn't even any food around. So, you know, and then they said the child might have had something on his hand that he didn't and touched his eyes, and I just got to such a scared, low place, thinking, sorry, I get teary, but I can't protect my child. Like, what am I going to do? I can't protect him. And, you know, I just prayed for hope and just someone to change our life, because it felt like we had to live in a bubble. It didn't feel like this was living, you know, and I was terrified, and I just prayed for
a miracle.
For a miracle to keep Isaac safe. And you know, I had a dream that I was walking. First, we were living in this facility, but it wasn't a hospital, but we were living there with other patients, and then in the end, I walked down this hallway, and the doctor put a hand on my shoulder, and I knew that we were going to be okay and that we'd be safe. And I turned around and I saw Dr. Jones's face vividly as anything, and I remember thinking, oh, there's hope. And it was only later, after I found out about it, and I Googled, and I was like, that's my doctor. And I knew, you know, that it was going to work, and we could create a better life. Sorry, I get emotional.
Amazing.
Well, and hadn't you even met another specialist from America who you initially thought was the person in your dream?
Yes, so just, it was the next week that my gastroenterologist called me and said, we have a doctor from Colorado who's coming out. He's an expert, and I've talked to him about. He talked to him in Isaac when they did a conference in the States, and when he came out, he said, I'd like to meet with him, and I was like, oh, this is it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be the doctor. That was going to be the doctor was going to, and then. Sounds horrible, but the second I saw him, I was like, that's not my doctor. And he was a lovely man, and he came up with some good strategies and stuff for Isaac, but I was like, that's not my doctor. Like, I knew that, and I was very grateful for his time and helping, but...
You kept searching.
I kept searching.
Yeah. And did you tell Dr. Jones about that dream at any point?
Not until we were close to graduating, I think.
Yeah.
You don't know how people are going to take it. I didn't want to freak you out.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Do you know when you get all these stalker vibes? Or
Yeah, no, I didn't know till the end.
it's weird, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you speak to anybody about that dream, to your pastor or somebody before you
I
actually...
told my husband, about it. And that was one of the reasons, because when I said this doctor, I still didn't know, I hadn't seen his face or I didn't know anything. And then when I said it was the doctor from my dreams, like this is him, it's going to work. He knows enough to trust my intuition. So, and you know, as a baby as well, Isaac would always say, take me to the mountains with the snow.
Wow.
Every time he's sick, take me to the mountains with the snow. So,
That is incredible.
yeah.
Do you remember much, Isaac? Do you remember much from Utah?
When I liked going to the habit. We lived next to a fast food place. We would go at least twice a week.
No, no. There's a burger place. There's a burger place next to us called The Habit.
Habit.
Yeah. Did you? I mean, main things.
Do you remember meeting Dr. Jones for the first time?
Like sitting in the waiting room with like all these other kids.
Yeah, so we had, when we would dose, we would then come to the waiting room for about 45 minutes and the kids would share an iPad together or colour in or do whatever, and it was mostly mums and we just chat and make friends, and all the local people from Utah was so friendly, and you know, we made lots of friends in that waiting room. And
Oh, that's beautiful.
yeah, it was lovely.
And how did Isaac go with the treatment in terms of psychological impact?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think
How did you feel when you started the treatment and when you got there about the whole treatment?
I didn't think it was gonna work.
You didn't think it's going to work. So despite your mom's dream, you had doubts.
I did.
Was it fear or doubt, do you think?
Felt like it was impossible.
It's like someone's going to tell you you're going to fly tomorrow. But
When did you believe it was going to work?
When we came home from Utah.
No, you believed in it before then.
maybe when he told his dad and his brother.
Well, I thought Isaac was very confident. I remember one time we'd just graduated from egg and we're talking about doing the milk, and Dr. Jones said, why don't we do it now? And I was kind of like, and Isaac's like, let's do it. And I was like,
So brave.
or next week.
No.
But he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
That's right.
Wow, so his motivation was there. So did you first do one then the other? Is that how it went?
We challenged egg first, and then milk, and then cashews, and then pistachios was the week after. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And when you came back and told your husband and your son and everybody else, how was that?
We had a big party, didn't we, when we got home?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of our other friends who had already graduated, they came to Newcastle for the party as well, and have a photo with like a lot of them all there, and just overjoyed, and, and then we spent the next year. Every time Isaac ate something, I had my phone in his face taking a photo of, like, first pizza, first ice cream, first, mostly with the egg and everything. He's like, can I just eat it?
His weight gain was tremendous.
First, and we just had it every first, and all these restaurants we'd never been able to go to, or, can I, we did
What
before
was the first thing I tried?
pizza.
Yeah.
How did that taste? Do you remember?
It was good.
And then I think we had the last 2 weeks before we flew back to Australia, Isaac and I fast food hopped every restaurant in America.
Well, I told him, I said, challenge this, test it, right? Go out, enjoy, live.
awesome.
Make
Yeah.
sure, before you go, I wanted them to go live life.
Yeah, I did.
And make sure they did before they left.
No.
So the plane ride would have been very different coming back home to going
Oh, unbelievable. The way over, like I said, we were supposed to fly American Airlines, and we talked to them about letting us pre-board and wipe down the seats and all that. And then once our flight got swapped, suddenly, like, oh, we haven't had this organised. But Qantas were great. They let us pre-board and do all that, but we hadn't had all that planned. And then, yeah, the flight home was just calm and relaxed and just felt free. So,
And when he went back to school, how did the school friends react?
how did they react?
I forgot.
Everyone was just so excited because we had a very supportive primary school, and they were very, very proactive with allergy wear, nut aware, and they'd put signs everywhere. All the kids would wash their hands as they walked into the classroom. Like, they were very supportive. So I think the community as a whole, they followed our journey, and
Wow.
they were all so excited for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And could they believe it when they saw it?
Well, they were all really supportive and really concerned in, as a community, keeping him safe. And I think it was, and then they were like, look at us now. Just amazing.
What about the gastroenterologist when he saw the results? How was that?
So I got a referral to see him from the GP, and so I hadn't seen him for 2 years, and then so the treatment for the EOE was to have the Flixitide and put the puffer in his mouth and swallow it twice, and we were still doing that in Utah. And when he came back, and I told the specialist that that's what we'd been doing, he said his height and weight had changed so dramatically that he couldn't see that what we were doing was of any use. And he said, and yet he's still been symptom-free. So he's been completely symptom-free. He's fine. And he said that he believes that he didn't have EOE anymore. And he said that he thinks doing the OIT improved his immune system so much that he no longer has the EOE. So instead of saying before you should never do OIT, but especially if you have EOE, you should absolutely do it. Then he said, I actually feel like the OIT has helped the EOE.
And this is probably the first Australian case ever
Yeah.
in the world.
Mm-hmm. So, and we were supposed to go back and do a scope, and then COVID shut everything down, and then we just didn't bother because
So he has been
we're symptom-free and we're medication-free for it, so I don't need a scope to tell me that he's doing well.
Wow,
Yeah.
incredible. And you mentioned there is an essay coming out soon in a magazine by your daughter. I didn't share that yet. Would you like to share that story?
So, my daughter Bianca, she's in year 9 now. They had a Catholic schools competition where you had to write an essay about faith, and she wrote about you and Isaac's journey, and she won the competition, and it's getting published in a Catholic education magazine this month. So
I want a copy of that.
yeah,
I'd love to see that.
it's a really beautiful essay that she wrote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which means for her as a sibling, this would
Yeah.
have been transformational, psychologically, emotionally, and every
Yeah.
level as well.
Well, I mean, when I first decided to go to Utah, I was splitting up my family, and I really wrestled with that because that's a lot to do to my children. So Noah stayed behind until October, and then we were all together October, November, December, and then January they went back, and my daughter went back too, and then it was just Isaac and myself. And I felt, I was tearing the family apart for this, on my faith and belief. But what I found is it was actually a gift to my other two children as well, because they were living a life of fear. Their life was obviously not as affected as Isaac's, but their life was, we couldn't travel to certain places, or we couldn't go to certain restaurants or do certain things because we were always so nervous. So it was a gift to them as well. Like when he had his anaphylactic reaction at school, and he went off in the ambulance, and my children came out for lunch, and everyone was like, "Did you hear about Isaac? Did you hear about Isaac? He went off in an ambulance." And my other two children didn't know what had happened or if he was okay, and they went and hid round behind one of the buildings and cried together, and because they didn't know if he was going to live. And it was hours till they found out he's going to come home from hospital tonight. So it's, it affects the whole family. But then, graduating and affects the whole family positively too. So it's just been the biggest blessing.
What about the grandparents? Did you have any grandparents involved as well in the whole journey?
No.
Or any other family members, or was it just the core family?
It's mostly just the core five. Yeah.
Did you share that information that you're going with the rest of your friendship and family group, or did you sort of keep it more private before leaving?
I just announced. Well, actually, we were on a when we went to Brisbane to see Dr. Jones. We were on a holiday with. There was about 20 families that we had a school group weekend away, and I left early for that. So I had told them, they're like, "Why are you leaving the holiday early?" I said, "Because I'm going to Brisbane, and I just wanted to, I wanted Dr. It was a bit manipulative, but I wanted him to see Isaac and say, yes, I'm not going to say no to this little boy."
Because you knew that most allergists would not accept a EOE patient.
Yeah.
In America even.
Yeah. So I just, I'd left the holiday, and so they all knew that I was pretty much going there to bed to, and sorry.
Well, something led you there. Your
Yeah.
fate, your dream, the manifestation. Yeah. And when you saw Dr. Jones for the first time, that was when you knew that was the man for your dream. Is that the second? Or was it when you saw him on Facebook?
Yeah, I Googled.
So you already knew he's the one.
I knew. Yeah.
That is amazing. What would you say to other food allergy families in Australia now?
I would say you don't have to live a life of fear. You don't. There isn't only one way. And we were told that avoidance was the safest option for us, but it wasn't working for us. He'd been hospitalised 6 times already, and the final time when we were in there, he actually had a biphasic reaction, so they were just getting ready to give us the paperwork to discharge us. and his eyes rolled back in his head and he started fitting again and we needed another EpiPen. You know, avoidance just wasn't working. So I would just, sorry, my phone, sorry. I mean, I wouldn't recommend, well, when we were first talking about with Dr. Jones, and I was like, I really want to do OIT, and my husband and I decided we would only do it with Dr. Jones. Like, that was just, it was him or we were waiting. So
other food allergy families need to have hope and change the current status quo.
well, absolutely. I mean, I look back at the way I used to be, full of fear, and I feel sorry for that person. The level of stress and anxiety that we lived with every day, it's cruel. And you can have a completely better life, you know. We're so happy and free, and he's so healthy, and you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this
Thank you.
interview.
Thank you for bringing him to Brisbane and letting me meet him
Yeah,
and you, because it was a tough decision on my part,
I know.
knowing everything. And
Can you tell us about it?
well, this was several years ago, and I had treated some patients. I mean, obviously a lot with OIT, but there was only a handful that I treated with EOE and OIT, and there's just an added complexity when you know that person's going to have to go back across the ocean, and also knowing the process can take longer. And I knew the sacrifice that they were already going to make, splitting the family, the whole thing. And so I was taking everything into account. You know, I was thinking, okay, usually best case at that time, it was like a 6-month process, but with EOE, it could take 8 months, 9 months, 12 months. It's just less predictable, especially years and years ago when I didn't have the experience at that time. And I started thinking about how difficult that may be for their family. And I felt my heart broke for them because I couldn't give them more concrete answers at the time. And so I was weighing a lot of things. There was so much unknown about it. I was criticized a lot by colleagues and called a cowboy and all, you know, different things when I knew that wasn't the case, but that there's also that. So I was weighing a lot of what would be the best and how can I serve the family the most. And I think the one thing is when we met in person, first of all, I could feel the commitment, the faith, the passion of Liesl and Isaac, but also got a feel for her support system and her husband and the whole family, that core that it was going to take. And I was just very honest with them and saying, this may take a while, and we're going to have to take some extra caution. We do anyway, but with EOE, we'd have to take some extra caution. We'd have to do some extra things that aren't typical. And I just wanted to lay out kind of the worst case scenario. And when she was still on board with it, and you had that faith and the passion and also the support, you know, from her whole family, that core 5 that she mentioned, how can I not give it a chance? Like, how can I not do it at that moment because I thought, I've done this before with other people. I've treated EOE or OIT in EOE children. I've had success with it. They know the circumstances. They've talked about it as a family. If I can do it, who am I to make that decision for them? Ultimately that's not my decision to make. I knew I could do it. I knew we could, work with him. I knew I could get that just from a clinical standpoint. All the other factors surrounding it, it kind of dawned on me, that's for her and her family to decide. That's for her and her husband to really ultimately commit to. It's my job to get them there if they want to be there. And they did.
It's incredible.
So,
Yeah, and I could, I had made peace with it not working, and I thought I can handle trying and failing, but I can't not try. Like if there's something in there that could help, even if we didn't graduate to the point where we were, even if we
Yeah.
could get to bite proof or
yeah,
may contain, just to have that little bit, anything, any bit that helped. But I could handle if we tried and it didn't work. But I just wanted to try because I just, in my heart, I just want to say, Dr. Jones, I know it's going to work.
Well, I think that's a good point too, because I got to a point where I often think of a lot of the families that would come over from Australia, and I would think, especially even the first one that came over, the very first, I thought, what's the motivation? What life have they lived that gets them to that point of desperation that they're going to take that measure? And when I hear the story, you have a greater understanding. I mean, listen to the story, failure to thrive, 25th, percentile on weight, 6 hospitalizations, several near-death experiences, trauma to the family, emotional, mental, physical distress, financial distress, all of those things come into play. And for me, it's like, well, if that's where they were at, and it's like, well, if I have a skill set that can help that, and they understand where we're at, I couldn't live with myself for not trying for them. I couldn't live with myself with not teaming up with them and offering that. And, but it takes kind of that communication, understanding. But it's like when you have those foundations, miracles can happen based on science.
It's not magic, it's pure science.
It's not magic, it is science, but it takes all those things. And their mindset, I can remember all along the way, their mindset was right on. They were relaxed, they were confident, there was faith. I know Isaac doesn't remember, but I do. I remember him having so much faith in the process, and everything I asked him to do, he did it every single time. And he was tremendous. So,
It was the best
yeah.
decision for him, clinically,
Yeah,
as well as a family.
yeah.
Thank you.